Welcome into this Monday, May 1st edition of EMAW Radio. I'm Mason Voth, the managing editor of EMAW Online at Rivals. Go get signed up now at kansasstate.rivals.com. Less than $9 a month. That's a pretty good deal to keep you engaged and give you daily K-State content. Off-season time, so, recruiting stuff is still always going to be hot right now. And not just on the high school side, as we know that K-State basketball is still trying to fill out a roster in the transfer portal. And K-State football lost their first. They've already lost guys in this win in this cycle or whatever of the year post-season ending. But this is the first time in this latest window that they lost a player after spring practice ended. Jalen Clem into the portal, an offensive lineman. Ultimately, just seems like a guy that saw how many dudes were in front of him. And even though I think he has serious talent and had potential, it does seem like he looked around and saw that he likely wasn't going to see the field this year, and there was going to be a lot of work because K-State just continues to reload on the offensive line. I mean, we're going to talk about the secondary a little bit later on here and the job that Joe Clanderman and Van Malone have done since they've been at K-State, but another guy that deserves a lot of props, and I think people know this, is Connor Riley, because the offensive line continues to just kind of reload, and he also deserves props for having all five of those starters, plus Taylor Poitier, who started the season last year, all decide they wanted to come back this year. That says a lot about how much they just want. I mean, obviously K-State means a great deal to them, but Connor Riley inside of that means a great deal to him. So that means that there are a couple of open scholarships on the football side. I don't think they're going to scramble to add anybody if they, don't see a fit or they don't really love anybody that's out in the portal. But there are a couple of scholarships to play with now for the football team, and they may be able to get a little active in that over the next couple of weeks or months or whatever it may be. So that is something to monitor. We'll probably talk about that down the line because just right now it's too early on to have kind of any indication as to what's going to happen there. Today, going to hit on a couple things. Biggest thing is recapping the draft weekend for K-State. It was a fantastic weekend for the Wildcats. We'll dive into all the reasons why it was a big deal for them, and also just how this draft weekend kind of highlights what we already knew about Chris Kleiman and what he's able to do. But another special weekend for K-State and Chris Kleiman himself individually. So we'll hit on that. Also, a couple of other basketball recruiting notes, and we'll get things rolling here on a Monday. So first thing that I was going to hit on today, and I mentioned it in the Monday Thoughts piece that I publish every Monday morning, is the type of draft weekend that K-State had. If you go and look at what they were able to do this weekend, it was really special for K-State as a program, and then also the individuals that went from K-State. And also, as many of you know out there, I'm sure a majority of the people listening to this are either Chiefs fans, or if you're not, like you're a Cowboys fan. That's kind of how this state works. I guess there's probably some Broncos merged in out there, and you're probably a little disappointed to see Felix Anudike-Uzomah having to go against you now, but it is what it is. It was a great weekend for that because the individuals that K-State had to get drafted all got opportunities that, it's really tough to even think that you could write something like that because, and I know that's kind of a cliche, but you think about it, and it's like one of those stories that you're writing in school when you're in like the third grade, and it's like, yep, so-and-so does this, and then, they get to do this with like perfect situation, perfect scenario. It doesn't make any sense. Like, let's drop a dose of realism here. Like Felix going to the Cowboys in the first round, or to the Chiefs in the first round, like, I can see it, but like that, it's maybe a little bit of a stretch. It worked out, and it was awesome to end the draft that way on Thursday night. So then we get up and we do it all again on Friday, and there's Julius Brents taken in the second round by the Indianapolis Colts, the place that he's from. He's like, all right, this is getting a little bit weird now. Things aren't going to go this way. And I, had people on Twitter mentioning me and saying, well, this just has to mean that Deuce is going to be a Cowboy now. I know a lot of people had to have that thought. And going into the draft, I would say that this is the beauty of it all. The three guys that we anticipated were surefire draft picks you could make the case that like it made sense for Felix to go to the Chiefs, for Brents to go to the Colts, for Deuce to go to the Cowboys. But for all of them to fit into that, it just seemed a little too far-fetched. Well, we get to the 6th round, and before Deuce Vaughn even gets taken, Josh Hayes is selected by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which was kind of a surprise. Like, Josh Hayes was an awesome player this year, but I did not have him on an NFL radar type of level. And there he goes to the Buccaneers. He's a guy from Lakeland, which is just 40 minutes from where the Buccaneers play their home games at Raymond James Stadium. And so this beautiful thing just keeps happening for these individuals at K-State. And then, of course, we finally get to Deuce Vaughn's selection with the Cowboys. Pretty special moment for him, even if, he was just a Texas kid that got to go play for the Cowboys. That's special to all those guys. The Cowboys had another player like that. Possibly my favorite player outside of K-State in the Big 12, DeMarvion Overshone, the Texas linebacker. He was a Texas kid, obviously went to UT, then got drafted by the Cowboys. I'm sure it was a special weekend for him too. So even if it's just like that, like that's special enough. Now you throw into the mix the fact that Deuce's dad works for the Cowboys as a scout, and his dad is the one who got to make that phone call. That's a pretty special deal. That went down. So that was awesome. The 4 draft picks all going to their hometown teams. An absolute special weekend. You couldn't have scripted it any better. And that works out just fine. And then you can look around. K-State also was able to have a pretty large number of guys get deals after the draft that ultimately didn't end up getting selected in the NFL draft. They end up with 6 players that are going to end up in rookie mini camp. Some sign undrafted free agent deals. Some just get the camp invite. Sammy Wheeler is going to head to the Chicago Bears. Echo Boydo, another local guy from Lawrence, is going to get to go to Kansas City and try to make his way onto the Chiefs. Adrian Martinez getting a shot with the Detroit Lions. Malik Knowles signs with the Vikings. Ty Zentner going to go do some things for the Eagles. And then Cade Warner getting a shot with the Buccaneers. So you got a couple of teammates there that are going to get to go together. So Felix and Echo Boydo, and then Cade Warner and Josh Hayes both going to the Buccaneers. So, I mean, this was a really big weekend for K-State to have 10 guys that in some fashion are going to get a shot in the NFL coming immediately out of the draft. People were asking, where does that stack up against others? I couldn't really tell you like that. I think that's going to take a lot of digging to go through and see what undrafted free agent deals have looked like in the past for K-State and how many there have been. What I can tell you, though, and this is another thing that contributes to such a special weekend for K-State, is the fact that there were 4 draft picks this year for the Wildcats. That is the most since 2002 for K-State. And so that's significant. It was the first time since 2003 that K-State had 2 players go in the first 2 rounds of the draft. K-State also notches their first round pick since Josh Freeman in 2009, and just a really special deal. So, I mean, 10 guys, it's nothing to sneeze at. Nobody has surpassed 2002 yet recently. If 2 more had gone, they would have tied 2002 because there were 6 guys taken then, but K-State comes up just shy of that. But within all of that, the other notes on some of this, that's now 7 players that have played for Chris Kleiman at K-State that have now been drafted into the NFL. That is a significant number right there. You think he took over in 2019. He's had a player drafted every year except for 2020, which we all know, weird year, COVID year, whatever. So that is significant for Chris Kleiman. And kind of looking around and seeing how everything else has played out. Like this is a testament to what he's able to do. Like we know he put guys in the NFL at North Dakota State, and some of that had to do with the staff that was around him. We know that he's built a great staff here in Manhattan, and they've continued to help develop guys to a certain level. The other interesting story to come out of the draft weekend, though, is Chris Kleiman had, I guess it's not a stray because it's not a bad thing, but he got mentioned in a story that was written about North Dakota State's Cody Mock, who was drafted by the Buccaneers. This is from the ESPN story. So, and this kind of just goes to highlight what Chris Kleiman sees He says, during a practice in the spring of 2018, North Dakota State coach Chris Kleiman called over Jim Kramer, the team's longtime strength coach. Kleiman gestured toward Mock, who had redshirted the previous season and was working with the tight ends. That kid's going to be a big kid, Kleiman told Kramer. And then the story goes on to say, but Kleiman, who is now the head coach of defending Big 12 champion Kansas State, saw Mock at a new position where he could ultimately reach a much higher level. He was the first person who ever told me I might have a shot at the NFL, Mock recalled. That was before I really even started playing offensive line. I'm like, man, this guy's crazy. How's he know? So that's just another little, there are a lot of things to highlight just how special Chris Kleiman has been since he got to K-State. But the fact that like you have that kind of story there where he saw a guy playing tight end and it's like, you know what, that guy's got a future as an offensive lineman in the NFL. Like, let's do this. Just another little success story for him. Another notable part about this, we know that Skylar Thompson kind of added to the list of quarterbacks that have played for Chris Kleiman that got drafted. Even though he didn't get drafted, Adrian Martinez getting his shot in the NFL, I think you should give a lot of credit to Chris Kleiman for what he was able to do in that. I also think that Cade Warner is another guy where you point to what playing for Chris Kleiman in K-State has done, because like those were two guys that coming from Nebraska had a lot of bad PR and had a lot of negativity thrust their way from Nebraska people. Now, I think in hindsight, to give credit to Nebraska fans, I think that there are a lot of them that start to realize that Scott Frost was the biggest problem for Adrian Martinez and their coaching staff. So I think that they're less harsh now as time has passed on Adrian Martinez. And even after he made the decision to transfer, they were on board and supportive of him. So like, I don't want to throw any of them under the bus for anything that's going on. But just kind of a weird, significant deal to point out. Like, I think those two guys, they have a lot. They have kind of a lot to be thankful to for Chris Kleiman and what he's been able to do for all of them. So we'll see if Chris Kleiman continues this, which I would assume that he will. But his ability to kind of rehabilitate these guys and get dudes that have transferred in to get their shot in the NFL as well is significant, because we now know they've had 3 transfer defensive backs end up getting drafted. Last year, Russ Yeast. This year, Josh Hayes and Julius Brents both get drafted. So that's a significant deal to have those guys in. And that's one of those areas where Van Malone and Joe Klanderman deserve some serious credit, to where they have been able to help develop guys that come in and kind of unlock the talent that you knew was there, but get it to actually show up on the field and have it be measurable to where they are put on the radar, to where this is a significant deal for them moving forward and get the shot in the NFL. So, I mean, this draft weekend is a highlight for the individuals that got selected for K-State, but it's also a highlight for Chris Kleiman and his staff and what K-State football is kind of back to being. You know, there was that little slip up that led to, okay, it's time for a change. We'll make this move. Chris Kleiman's coming in, and now things have kind of picked right back up, and you can start to see the trajectory of K-State football is just kind of rolling on again. And K-State's going to be in position to be one of the better teams in this new version of the Big 12. Even the way that it currently sits, they talked about Texas's chances on College Game Day over the weekend, and they were asking, you know, could Texas win? Of course, RG3 gave a dumb answer. He said that they could. I'm just sorry. You just haven't paid enough attention if you think Texas is actually going to win this thing. Like, they're Texas. They're gonna give it up somewhere in there and make some errors. That's why I feel confident, and I bet with our boy Alec that Texas won't even be in Arlington next year for the Big 12 championship game, because they just dropped the ball too much. Not like literally, but like in a figurative way. Texas always drops the ball. But Pete Thamel of ESPN, his pick was K-State to repeat, and I think that goes to show just how successful and special things have been for K-State and where they're set up. And then within all of this, there is a story from Dennis Dodd on CBS Sports yesterday, and he was talking about Deuce Vaughn and his selection and how that went down for K-State and how it all ultimately ended up working out. There was a little snippet in there, and he said, "Do not be distracted by these predictions. This story goes beyond draft rooms. It reverberates from this charming hamlet. It goes into television network boardrooms. Media rights sources let it be known that the likes of Kansas State being nationally relevant was key to the Big 12 getting a new, richer TV deal, despite the conference losing Texas and Oklahoma." So K-State is helping prop up this new Big 12, which we knew from just the sheer fact that the engagement level of the K-State fan base, yes, it can't match what some of the sizes are of these SEC and Big Ten bases, whatever. But what we do know that the percentage of engagement there is very high. So when a K-State game is on, K-Staters are watching. Like that makes them attractive. And now we know that K-State is being viewed in that way in some fashion, not to some insane extent, but at least to a notable way to kind of keep track of that. So just every little thing that came out of this draft weekend that has any ties to K-State was significant and was a really big deal with everything that was able to go down. So that's just pretty special to think about how it all worked out. And now, I mean, we'll look around and kind of wait and see how everything's going to work out for the Wildcats in the league. I mean, it seems likely if you start to go around and think about, okay, what are the fits of some of these guys going to be? Are they going to be able to make a roster? Are they going to be able to play right away? Like where are we looking at here? Well, I think it's pretty cut and dry. I think Felix Anudike-Uzomah, Julius Brents, and Deuce Vaughn are all guys that will make the 53-man roster. That's pretty simple to say. And I think two of those guys, Anudike-Uzomah and Brents, are going to get every opportunity to get the first snap of the season defensively for their two teams. And then in the case of Deuce, like I know more about this situation because I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm very thankful that they cut Ezekiel Elliott. I mean, he's just putrid. He's terrible. It was awesome for 2-3 years in Dallas, but my goodness, what a waste of space and money that they've had. So Tony Pollard takes over as the number one. There are 4 other running backs on the roster. And even though Deuce may not get like the share of carries that like a number 2 back would, he's going to be heavily involved in what they do because of his versatility. So he'll get some carries. He'll catch some balls. And in all likelihood, they'll like to use him in the return game. And I, as a Cowboys fan, I would like to see that because I would love to see them just cut Kevontae Turpin. There's no reason for him to be on the roster. I mean, he takes every kick out. He takes it like 24 yards from halfway back in the end zone. So the Cowboys are starting at like the 21-yard line. Like that's, we should just take in the touchback, whatever. Waste of money and space, whatever. So I think that there are a lot of ways that those guys see the field. Now, the real question is going to be when it comes to Josh Hayes, what's the situation like in Tampa? How is he going to be able to kind of fit into the mix? And does he do enough to get to where the Bucs decide, hey, we can't let this guy go? He has serious value in what he can do for us. We'll play him on special teams, and we know that he can step up if we need him to be on the field to get defensive reps. So that's something to monitor, and we'll take a look at that. That's another thing that I broke down a little bit deeper in the Monday Thoughts piece, the 4 draft picks, where they end up being. And then, we'll see. Like Malik Knowles and Echo Boydo are guys that have a chance to, at the very least, be practice squad guys. And I think that's what the other undrafted guys for K-State are going to kind of be fighting for is, are they going to get that chance? And what are we going to see ultimately come out of that? So that's going to be a fascinating thing to follow along with. Now, shifting our thoughts ahead to what next year's draft is going to look like for K-State. So they get 4 draft picks this year, a significant number for them. You can go through, I think they were probably in like the top 25 of teams that had draft picks this year in the NFL. I'd have to go look and see if I can find the actual number. So let's see. There were doing the math and the quick counting here. There were only 19 schools that had more draft picks than K-State this year. Of course, the 4 schools with the most amount of draft picks are schools that are playoff contenders every year: Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, and then TCU last season. So that's significant. They're really, surprisingly, Pitt had 6 guys get drafted. Maryland had 5. Stanford sucked, and they got 5 players drafted. That just goes to reinforce my notion that David Shaw is the most overrated college football coach that we've seen in the last 15 years. And I know Matt Campbell is out there, but Matt Campbell at least is winning games a little bit more consistently than David Shaw was. And I know Matt Campbell's had talent. I mean, he had more guys get drafted this year. He had 3 more players get drafted, and he still has not lived up to expectations. But my word, David Shaw, terrible. But anyway, K-State ties for 20th for most players drafted in the 2023 NFL draft. So what does 2024 look like for the Wildcats? Well, the obvious one is Cooper Beebe. He's going to be a guy that competes for first-round pick status. Pretty simple. He's a guy that probably could have gone in the first 2 days this past year, decided to come back to K-State, and he's going to get the opportunity to play with his brother and play with all the same guys that were on the offensive line with him last season. They all decided to come back. That's a really big deal. Early mock draft from Pro Football Focus had Cooper Beebe going number 26 overall to the Cowboys. So that would be a first-round pick, and I would gladly take another Wildcat in Dallas. It's been a while since I've had some cats on the field for the Cowboys that could really pull for. I mean, I guess Deontay Burton was kind of floating around for a little bit there. But, you miss Terrence Newman in Dallas. So Cooper Beebe, easy one to spot. Will Howard's another one. If Will Howard comes anywhere close to replicating what he did when he took the ball last year and became the starter for K-State, he's going to get drafted. There's just too much there to like about him from a quarterback standpoint. His size is a big deal. He obviously has the arm. He showcased the ability to really fit the ball into some tight windows this year. Like, Will Howard's going to get that opportunity as long as he plays similar to the level he did this season. Then Ben Sennett's another guy, because speaking of, Will Howard fitting the ball in the tight spaces, the guy that he would do that to most of the time was Ben Sinnott. And Ben Sennett's athleticism at his size and the way he moves, like, he is the kind of tight end that guys in the NFL want right now to be able to use as weapons. So there's a lot to like there. And then there's going to be some fringe guys for K-State next year that's probably going to be dependent on how they end up playing this year, if they put up the numbers and the other measurable stuff that could get them drafted. Khalid Duke is a guy that stands out. This is really going to be a huge season for him. He's going to get the opportunity to really show himself off now that Felix Anudike-Uzomah's gone. He's going to be able to move back to playing defensive end most of the time. I'm excited to see what Khalid Duke's season looks like, because as we know, 2021, it basically got robbed from him. And then that's when Felix made his ascension and blew up. And so then last year, he's having to go back and forth. He's not 100% yet, has to play linebacker a little bit more. This is really going to be a good and fun season to watch Khalid Duke. So that's a guy that could possibly have another chance. But there are plenty of other dudes out there that you could maybe think of for K-State. One that I said that could be considered was Randon Plattner. Hey, the league always needs long snappers, and I've never seen Randon Plattner make a mistake. So that's a sneaky under the radar guy. And being a long snapper in the NFL is one heck of a gig. I mean, those guys get to play for like 25 years, and they're 45 and racking up $500,000 a year. It's a pretty good life. So I would love Randon Plattner to get a long snapper opportunity next year. Let's make that happen. So that's just kind of a recap and a look ahead. NFL draft stuff for K-State. They killed it this weekend. Very, very special time for K-State, and also for the K-Staters that double as Chiefs or Cowboys fans out there. Or if we got any Colts and Bucks listeners out there, you're probably just as jazzed about the Cats that you have on your team. And it's going to be fun to watch, because this is a good crop of talent for K-State to get in the league. Just to be realistic and honest and everything, like, it seems like it's been a while since there have been a number of K-Staters that have been able to go into a league like this and immediately be contributors and actually be on the field. Like, I know that DJ Reed right now is tearing it up for the Jets. People love him in their secondary. Obviously, Tyler Lockett has been doing great things for a while now. But this is an insertion of 3 or 4 guys this year that could really see significant time and help teams win right now in the NFL. It's nice to go from having, fringe guys like, yeah, he made the NFL, or he's hanging around, he's done this, to there are going to be legit dudes again in the NFL from K-State, and that's going to only continue under Chris Kleiman, as we know. Things continue to look really, really good there. So just something to take note of. Mentioned last week during EMAW Radio that Texas had lost a 5-star commit, the number 5 player in the class of 2023, Ron Holland. He decommitted from Rodney Terry in Texas, who they've now had 2 decommitments in their high school recruiting, but they're doing just fine in the transfer market. Well, I didn't want to say too much last week when talking about it because I just didn't have any concrete info or know anything. But we now know that there is interest for K-State in Ron Holland. They're one of the 7 or 8 schools that have reached out and seem to be interested in pursuing him. And we will see if the Wildcats can kind of make that initial cut down and have a real chance. It sounds like they're going to have every opportunity. Arkansas might be the front runner. I know any name that comes up, Arkansas is associated with, but the Cats are going to put themselves at least in a little bit of a position, it would appear, to try and see what Ron Holland is thinking. And again, I'm not, I don't think it's a certainty, and I don't know that they end up getting him, but this is the kind of freshman that could come in and play immediately and have an impact, and it would be at a position they need. He's a 6'8" forward. He could come in and do a lot of things for K-State. So I think that's an important thing to note. If they were to get him, he's the kind of freshman that immediate impact. I've got my reservations about what the 3 freshmen coming in this year can do. I think they're all very talented, but it's typically not like you have to be the elite of the elite freshman to come in and really make an instant impact on a team like K-State that thinks they're going to be in the top half of the league next year and competing for another deep run in the NCAA tournament. Very rarely do you get freshmen to come in and play significant roles. Ron Holland is the type of freshman that would be able to play that type of role. The other note that we have going on in recruiting, tomorrow is when Tyler Perry will announce his decision. Still no change there. Fully expect that to be K-State. So the Cats will get ready to add their first transfer edition of this cycle and start to replace Marquise Noel with Tyler Perry. So that is a significant deal for them. A couple of other things just to kind of clean up and finish out everything. K-State baseball stayed very, very hot. They took down Texas Tech twice this weekend. The Red Raiders had been ranked number 14 in the country entering the weekend. Batcats take 2 of 3. They move up in the RPI. They're starting to get some top 25 love out there. It's a big deal for the Batcats as they continue to try and compete. They're now 11-7 in Big 12 play, tied for second place. And if you are anywhere near the Wichita area, they will be in Wichita tomorrow, Tuesday night, to take on the Shockers at 6 o'clock at X Stadium. I will likely be there. I gotta run that by my wife and make sure that it's okay if I disappear and go to a ball game tomorrow night. But I plan to be meandering around X Stadium and seeing if the Batcats can get revenge on the Shockers. Because as most of you that have followed along since we came live on EMAW Online in September, there's one team that I can't handle K-State losing to very well. It's Wichita State. Every day is a good day to put Wichita State fans in their place. So I hope the Batcats can do it, get their revenge. And then after that, they've got a weekend series with SEMO at home. And then they finish out the next 2 weeks after with conference play at Oklahoma State and then home against TCU. Very big. They have every chance to be an NCAA tournament team right now. That would be significant. So we'll see if they're able to get it done. So if you're in the Wichita area, might not be a bad idea to come out. Looks like the weather's supposed to be good and check out the Batcats tomorrow night against Wichita State, who had been in the top 25, but they dropped a game this weekend. They are tied for first place in the American Athletic Conference. So there you go. That's going to do it. Nice and tidy. 30 minutes of EMAW Radio on this Monday, and I will see you all again on Wednesday. We'll have a little bit more to discuss on the Tyler Perry front, as he should be committed by that point, and the Wildcats will have a guard in place. So that is what you have to look forward to. Stay up to date with everything else on EMAW Online. We'll have coverage tomorrow once Perry makes his decision, one way or the other, how it impacts K-State. That'll do it. So I'm Mason Voth. I'm out of here. Be sure to subscribe on the YouTube page and the podcast links and follow along with us at EMAW Online.